A big thank you to Greg for the invitation to be here this evening, and to Jill. I'm also very glad to have met Father Peter, and I think he's brought some of his congregation with him as well. It's amazing to see so many people gathered in a church on a Saturday evening when you could be watching Strictly Come Dancing. Our subject, as you've seen, is understanding Islam. I'm going to try and divide our time into 4 blocks of, say, 15 or 20 minutes each. I shall try and speak for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes of questions. Greg has a roving mic. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. I'm not going to give a 60-minute lecture from the front. So you'll see that the very first question we have here is, how do Muslims describe Islam? I hope you've all got a copy of this little leaflet, which I have obtained from a Muslim organization in London. It's a booklet that I've used over many years, because it's Muslims trying to explain their faith at its very best to a British audience. This is a kind of shop window for Islam for British readers. And you're welcome to take this booklet home with you and read it. You may not be able to read all the small print in this light, but if you look at the first page, here we have something about basic beliefs. So here is a Muslim trying to explain what is most fundamental in their worldview. 3 basic ideas. Tawheed, the oneness of God. There's only one God, one creator God, so everything in the universe is dependent on that one creator God. Risala, prophethood. Muhammad is the apostle of God. God has sent a succession of prophets, and Muhammad is the climax. And akhirah is life after death. I encourage you to read this statement at home, because you're trying to listen to a Muslim explaining what her faith is all about. Incidentally, if you were asked to explain the basic beliefs of Christianity and to sum them up in 3 words, that's something to think about as well. The second page is the 5 basic duties of Islam, and this is what we all know as the pillars of Islam. These are the 5 basic duties. Whether you like it or not, these are obligations. The first is shahada, belief, and this is the basic creed of Islam. If you can say this sentence with conviction, that makes you a Muslim. There is no God except Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of God. Incidentally, I sometimes say to Muslims, I can say the first part of your creed, I can't say the second. I can say there is no God but Allah, but God. So that's the basic summary of their belief. And notice that's a lot simpler than the Apostles' Creed, and a lot simpler than the Nicene Creed. Second is salat, the compulsory prayers. Whether you like it or not, you are obliged to say these prayers 5 times a day, and of course you say them in Arabic, and you prostrate and so on. There's a particular ritual that you have to go through. The third pillar is zakat. It's almsgiving, and you're required to give a proportion of your income. Number 4 is the fast during the month of Ramadan, and 5 is pilgrimage, Hajj. So these are the 5 basic duties. There's no choice about it. You are obliged to do these things. Next page. Some paragraphs about the Quran. I've got a copy of the Arabic Quran up here, and it's on this little wooden stool. This is a way that Muslims try to show respect for the word of God, because they believe that the Quran is the very words of God communicated to the mind of the Prophet, and he recited them and people memorized it, and it was eventually written down. the paragraph at the bottom about the Sunnah, that is the example of the Prophet. Muslims are really interested in all sorts of details about the Prophet, how he ate, how he dressed, and all sorts of details about his private life and his relationships with his different wives. And a great deal of Muslim culture and practice is based on the example of the Prophet and how he lived. And there you've got a paragraph, a column about the life of Muhammad. Festivals. Here are the main festivals. So for us we have Christmas and Easter and so forth. Here are the really important festivals. And many of you may remember that during the month of August we had the month of Ramadan. Then some paragraphs about marriage and family life. You may be interested to see how they describe their standards there. Something about diet, something about dress. And on the next page, you've got a paragraph about social manners. Here, under this paragraph, we've got the greeting that Muslims use to greet each other. And I'm going to encourage you to say it after me. The first is Assalamu alaikum. Can you say that? Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu means peace. Alaikum means be upon you. Now if I say that to you, your reply is Wa alaikum ussalam. Wa alaikum ussalam. You see, Muslims are very good Anglicans. They like versicles and responses. The Lord be with you. So this is how Muslims greet each other. And I very often use this as a way of greeting Muslims. Some of them find it a bit strange, but very often they return it. And it's a way of breaking the ice and showing them that we have understood something that's a very important part of their culture. So can you say after me, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaykum as-salam. Now can I encourage you to say that to your neighbor and get your neighbor to respond to you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaykum as-salam.
Great, well done. Now you say it to me.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaykum as-salam. Okay, I hope you've got the basic idea. Now, any questions about what I've said, or any questions about anything that you've read in this leaflet already? Greg has got the roving mic, so if he'd like to pass it round to anybody who would like to ask a question.
Anybody would like to ask a question just on the what's been said so far?
Salam means peace, yes. Yes, it's like the Hebrew shalom. Arabic and Hebrew are very, very close to each other. In Hebrew it's shalom, in Arabic it's salam.
So there's a question there. I'll bring the mic up to you in just a moment. Yes, is there?
Are women expected to go on the Hajj as well? What happens?
Yes, if they can, they should go on Hajj, yes. Yes. But of course you only do it if you can afford to go and if you can provide for your family when you're away and so forth. But yes, women go as well as men.
Just, are they born into this
You need to get a bit closer. You try to speak, yeah.
Are they born into this religion? Yes, they are. I mean, the idea is that if you're born into a Muslim family, you are a Muslim, whether you like it or not. There's nothing like baptism in Islam. If I wanted to become a Muslim, I would have to say the creed, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the apostle of God, in front of some witnesses. And that's all you need to do to become a Muslim. But yes, you're born into the faith. And of course, one of the problems from our point of view is that we hear many stories of Muslims who want to become Christians, who want to become disciples of Jesus, and it's very, very hard for them because it's regarded as being treachery, turning their backs on their culture and their family. So once you're in the family of Islam, in the community of Islam, it's very, very difficult to leave it. There are many cases going on at the moment, and there's one particular one in Iran of an Iranian pastor who was brought up as a Muslim but not a practicing Muslim, and he's been a Christian, a Pentecostal pastor for about 20 years, and he's been in prison, and they have pronounced the death penalty on him, but they are going through various processes. One of his arguments was that he wasn't a practicing Muslim. But as far as the law is concerned, if you're born into a Muslim family, a Muslim community, you're a Muslim whether you like it or not. And it's now gone right up to the supreme leader of the country, I think, for a verdict.
Any other questions? Roger. Oh, so there's one over. Can you, if you use the mic for all questions, and we'll all hear them, it'll be helpful. Thank you.
This booklet is quite interesting for what it doesn't mention.
Yes.
It says nothing at all about the relationship between theological power and political power in Islam, and it says nothing at all about Sharia law.
Yes, absolutely right. We're going to say a bit more about the politics later, so can we hold that back? But you're absolutely right to point out that what it doesn't say is very significant. Let's just be clear what Sharia is. It's the Arabic word that means law, Islamic law. Now, Islamic law is based on the Quran and the Sunnah, that is the example and the teachings of the Prophet. So, in the centuries after the death of the Prophet, Muslims spent years and years, decades, formulating laws covering every aspect of life, inheritance laws, divorce laws, to do with trading, honesty in trading, commerce and so on. So Islamic law really does cover almost every aspect of life. But there are, of course, different schools of law. They don't all follow exactly the same interpretation. And they have tried to revise their interpretation of law at various stages, especially in the 19th century and the 20th century.
Thank you. Colin, question, just gentleman here. Thank you, Dal.
How are the Muslims taught to regard Christianity?
Do you mind if we postpone that till the last? That's the last question. We're coming onto it later.
Okay.
Josie,
It's a very, very good question. I just want to address it a little later, if you don't mind.
One at the back
I was very interested to hear that you feel comfortable saying there is no God but Allah. Can you just slightly amplify on that? Is Allah the same as God as we understand him?
This is a very tricky question, and it's all right. We could take quite a long time on it, but very, very briefly, let me explain my own thinking on the subject. The word Allah is the Arabic word for God with a capital G. So it means the God, the high God. So what Muhammad was trying to do was to say to the Arabs, and the people of Mecca at the time were worshipping about 360 gods and goddesses in the Kaaba in Mecca. And Muhammad's message was, let's worship the top God only, Allah. Now, 15 million Arabic-speaking Christians in the Middle East use the word Allah for God. So if you said to a Lebanese Christian, oh, but Allah is the God of Islam, she would look at you as if you're crazy. Allah is the word that every Arabic-speaking Christian uses for God. So Allah is not peculiarly Islamic. Now, one of the problems with this question, are we worshipping the same God? It's a kind of trick question. If I said to Roger, who asked this question, Roger, have you stopped beating your wife, yes or no? I'm asking the question in such a way that he feels he's got to answer yes or no. Whichever answer he gives, he's fallen into a trap and he's admitted that he's beaten Jill. And he has to have the presence of mind to say, hold on, I never have beaten my wife. Now, the problem with this question is that we ask it in such a way that you feel you've got to say, yes, we worship the same God, or no, we don't worship the same God. And in my understanding, there is only one creator God. Muslims have a certain understanding of what that God is like, and Christians have a certain understanding of what that God is like. Our concepts of God have quite a lot in common, but there are quite a lot of differences as well. But can we use the same word for God, the same name for God? I would say most emphatically yes. We can. And let me just give you something I was going to use at the very, very end, but it's very relevant now. This is the Arabic word for God. That's the A-L-L-H, Allah. It's a very cheap plastic. I bought it in Cairo about 40 years ago. A taxi driver would have it beside the mirror as he drives along at breakneck speed through the traffic in Cairo. This is Allah. I like to say I believe in Allah, but the Allah that I believe in is the Allah who has revealed himself supremely through Jesus and through Jesus on the cross. So, yes, I believe in Allah, and I will talk till the cows come home with Muslims about their understanding of God and my understanding of God. And we'll realize that we've got many things in common, but there are certain very, very significant differences as well, which we're coming to a little bit later.
There's a question from Josie at the front, sir.
Can we have two more questions, and then we'll move on to the next...
Somebody over here, and one
yes.
over there, I think that's right. So, lady in the middle here, Darryl.
As a woman, I'm very wary of Islam because it appears to me that Islamic law is heavily slanted against women. Have you got any comments on that?
Thank you. It is absolutely true that in traditional Islam there are three fundamental differences. The differences between men and women, between Muslims and non-Muslims, and between free people and slaves. These are absolutely fundamental differences that were written into Islamic law and were there set in concrete for centuries. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But let's recognize that Islam has changed and is changing all the time. There is a feminist movement within Islam. And there are many Muslim women who are as liberated as any Western women. So there are tensions. There are some who are stuck in the traditions and the culture of the past, and there are others who want to adapt and change. So you've got to realize that some Muslim women are living in a very, very difficult situation. And incidentally, we have to say that the position of women in Islam, in the Middle East and other Muslim countries, has changed quite significantly, very significantly, as a result of Western influence over the last 2 centuries or so. So some of this liberation has come about through Western influences. So in some places, yes, they're pretty liberated. In other countries, in Afghanistan and many other contexts, they are still living in very, very, very traditional societies. But let's remember, incidentally, if you read 19th century English novels, Jane Eyre and all that, think about the position of women in this country just a little time ago. Who's watching Downton Abbey? And the position of women there. Okay, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Yes, we've moved on, but other societies are not necessarily moving at the same speed that we are.
Well, we only moved on because the women took the law into their own hands and did something about it, and it's about time the Islamic women did.
And many of them are doing that. There was an Afghan woman, member of parliament, speaking on breakfast television the other day. Some incredibly articulate women. There are Muslim women in the House of Lords, I think, Baroness Warsi and others. One more question before we go on to the next section. Is that...
Sorry, Daryl. Can it wait?
Right. We both forget you.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Muhammad is his prophet, Allah's prophet.
Yes.
But they do acknowledge the prophets from the Jewish prophets, don't they?
They
Moses.
They do.
And Jesus is a prophet as
Yes.
far as they're concerned.
Yes.
How much do they use their teaching?
In Islam, there are 26 major prophets. The first was Adam, but Noah, Moses, David, John the Baptist, Jesus, and Muhammad is the last of the prophets. So, yes, they would say, and the Quran says that it is a confirmation of the previous scriptures, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and so on. But as far as Muslims are concerned, it is the Quran that gives the real, final, definitive version of God's revelation. So they might read the New Testament, but if it doesn't agree with the Quran, it can't be true. So yes, they regard Jesus as a prophet. He was born of a virgin. They have a very, very high view of Jesus, but he's most emphatically not the Son of God. And we'll come to some of the other points about Jesus as well. You had a question. We don't
One
want to...
very last question.
Yes.
Are you okay with that one?
Yes, sure.
It was partly with that as well, because I wanted to know how long it had been in existence. And I didn't realise that they used it.
How long Islam has been in existence? Muhammad was born around the year 570 AD. His call to the prophethood was in 610 AD, and he died in 632. So it's several hundred years after Jesus.
Yes. And did he write the Quran then?
If you said that to a Muslim, they would be very upset.
Oh, sorry.
Because in their understanding, Muhammad was illiterate.
Yes.
He received the revelation and he recited it, and they say he couldn't read or write. He was illiterate. He recited it and people memorized it. So that's their understanding. And their understanding, he didn't compose it in here. It all came from God, and he simply recited it.